continuous force at home. If you go to the next slide, that'd be great. And then we also do some other data. One of the things that we've been working on this year with Duquesne University is what's called a stress thermometer. It's very simplistic, but it actually has yielded great results to show that when the students come into the room, kind of their perceived level of stress, and then when they leave the space after our intervention and going back to the class, they actually have a very statistically significant reduction in their stress as they're going back to class rather than continuing to be escalated, for the rest of the day. And this was something that Duquesne actually presented on at a psychology conference in Boston about a month ago. So it's pretty significant, which was actually great. That's one of our elementary schools up in Northgate, which is Bellevue. Something also to point out, it'd be great if we could go to the next slide. Sorry about that.
You gave me the point and then I hit it and then you were still talking. Neat man over here.
So one of our other districts that we're in is Carlington, and something that's very significant, the thing that really sticks out to me that I love to talk about is how we keep kids out of higher levels of care. So we were able to, due to our interventions, keep students out of approved private schools, which are extreme costs to school district. And so we've kept multiple kids out of those placements due to our intervention, keep them in school where they should be, keep them on, hopefully keep them on track. We also have a lot of great evidence that faculty use the skills that we're teaching, and that they're using them for themselves, and they're reinforcing it with their students as well. So that was like the nutshell. I could go on for 3 more hours, but that was the nutshell of the program. Thank you for your consideration, and we hope to be able to serve your school community.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
On that one slide, what was lunch? Like I noticed that all those things were on there were stress, anxiety, and all that, but
So lunch,
Lunch,
yeah.
great.
So there's 2 different things going on there. One is some students are very overstimulated in the cafeteria. Lights and the noise, and so we can bring them in sometimes and help them process through that. Some kids with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder actually can see the flickering and like the fluorescent lights, and it'd be quite triggering. So I mean, there's a bunch of things we can work on. The other thing is we have structured groups during lunch periods that kids can sign up for. So we have like groups on like anxiety, we've done groups on like senior transition. A lot of seniors are super anxious about going to college, and so we've done groups on that. Peer relationships, we always have a spike in February because everybody seems to break up right before Valentine's Day and everybody's really stressed out about it. And it's the end of the world and we have to tell them about how it's not. So we kind of bring them around to it. So that's what lunch is.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I see you brought the outdoors, indoors. Do you ever take them outdoors?
That is something that we're trying to do. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't done it yet, but that's something that we would love to do. It's a
It'd be
natural
great if schools
extension.
would create outdoor spaces.
Yeah,
that are
outdoor
safe,
chill rooms.
safe and beneficial and
Yeah.
healthy, clean air.
Any other questions for Mr. Davies? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
what about pets? We were just reading,
Wicker Valley was on the news this past week about the bulldog that they brought in
That's
to
right.
help with.
Saw that.
And we're like, oh, dog, wait till we tell Jody we want a
No,
dog.
me and Michael were at a meeting, we were PSBA
Yeah.
years ago, and they had a
A
dog
couple
there.
years ago,
so
they had a thing about dogs, and we were looking into that.
So that's an ultimate dream of ours, is to actually have a dog in the chill room. There's a program in Slippery Rock that you can get your MSW and then a master social work and get a license in like dog therapy. And so we've actually partnered with them to get some interns to start flowing through in the fall. We've used them a couple of times already, but the idea eventually is to hire someone who actually would have, it would be pretty cool to have a full-time dog in there, or at least to some capacity.
Grace does have a dog that she brings in from one of her Crystal. Crystal still comes, Crystal used to come and read children.
They would read to Chris.
That's right, they would read Crystal, I stand corrected.
Heck of a dog.
Portland Manor today, we had a therapy dog for, part of a program that we were doing.
Didn't the dog paint?
We didn't paint with the dog today,
Ah.
but he does paint with his tail.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Davies.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, administrative reports, Grace is here to stop.
thing I wanted to talk about is EDS program. It's the extended day school program. It's agreement that'll be on the agenda for approval next week. And EDS is the program that we piloted at South Central and Muse. It is, we are contracting with a third party for space for, to provide before and after school childcare. And the program went so well at South Central and Muse that we expanded it to Borland Manor. So that agreement that you'll approve next week would be taking Borland Manor as our third school for that program. And parents in the district have been asking for it for a number of years. And when we only started it at the 2 schools, you know, why not ours? And we're still getting that, but Weilandville and Hills, our other 2 schools, just don't have space, which sort of leads into the demographic thing that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So I want to just cover EDS real quick because that is something that'll come up on the board for your approval. Any questions about the EDS program?
So Borland Manor will be implemented in the fall.
Yes, the agreement now incorporates Borland Manor in addition to South Central Muse. And the school district does receive a percentage in lieu of a rental fee. So the proceeds they bring in, we get a percentage of that. And when I checked last, there have been checks coming in. No, I don't need the number, I wouldn't put you on the spot there, but yeah. I checked the revenue stream and it has been coming in. And like I said, there are waiting lists, so it is something that parents definitely see as a huge resource. And in addition, they have a process to where a family, if they're eligible economically, they can go through the county to get that funding for them. So they know that process, they're able to walk families through that. So we heard in January about our new demographic study. So this will be a report in a series of reports, I guess. When I talked to Michael, this kind of stuff is very complex. You could meet for hours to talk about it, and no one can sit down and digest this kind of stuff in a board report. So what I intend to do is just start, from 30,000 feet and talk about what the demographic study says is our max projections, talk about what our current enrollment is and our current capacities within schools, and then how that relates to full day K, how it relates to EDS or anything else, because everything is impacted by enrollment. So this chart makes a whole lot of sense to me. It may not make any sense to anybody else. And when you create these kind of documents, there are certain assumptions you have to start with. So at the bottom, I just made some notes so as to how did he come up with 456. So that's what that is. But before I go into that, I do want to talk about column 1. So column 1 is the schools. Column 2 is the current enrollment. So I pulled this March 15th, and what I saw, I was curious to see where we were, because the last time we really talked about enrollment was October 1st, and our enrollment had declined. So I was curious to see what's happened. A lot has changed with masking and COVID, so I was wondering, okay, did we see a change? Right now, enrollment is still unsettled, is the best way I can describe it. K to 6 seems to be settling. In K to 6, we actually grew from October 1st to March. We grew by, a modest 17 students. But, we were down by 20, some at the beginning. So, okay. 7 through 12 did not. They declined. Continued to decline, I should say, from the start of the year to October till now. So, discovering that 2 days ago didn't really allow me enough time to dive into those details and find out, okay, in K6, the new kids we got, were those exited students that came back, or are they totally new students? In 7 through 12, where are they going? Are they in a placement? Are they in cyber? Did they move? What's going on? Are they quitting? All that stuff's important. So next month, I should have that kind of data to try to give some insight into what's going on in 7 through 12. And kindergarten pre-registration has started. And when I checked on those numbers, they are right where we'd expect them to be, actually probably a little higher than I was expecting them to be. It's the second week of early registration, we have 311. Our typical kindergarten classes have been getting to be around 400, so we're well on pace to have a kindergarten class like we've requested. Move into capacity by CMSD calculations. So, any one person can do this in a variety of different ways, so I just want to tell you how I do it. So for CMSD, I use our policy. I use our policy that talks about how many students we recommend max in a class. I also assume, because it gets too fuzzy, that every available classroom will be maxed out with that amount of kids, which we know will never happen. It'll be 34 here and 12 here. You know, it won't work out that way, but for calculations, that's how it's done. I also do no unconventional measures to try to gain another classroom. So in that regard, I'm not art on a cart, I'm not moving a special program to another school, I'm not doing anything, like if I took a snapshot of what Borland Manor looked like today, that's what I went with. So that's where you get the capacity amounts for that. And one key element of this is that this time around, I calculated it for full day K, because that's a conversation we need to be having as we move towards Wildville. So when you calculate for full day K, a classroom is only worth 24. In our current status with half day K, one of those classrooms is worth 48. So that's why I did it that way. So if you look at the ones in red under the CMSD calculations, there are 3 schools that right now could not facilitate full day K if we went to it because of space. So that's why that's important. Now, if you look at all of the numbers in the CMSD calculations, go to the final column with the demographic population max prediction. That's the max number they said we could expect by 2030. So when you look down that list, there are only 3 schools, well, most of them wouldn't be able to hold the class if you look at CMSD projections. But some will. Middle school, Muse, Borland Manor, those 3 could take those maximum projections if they came true. So that's where I pull in the capacity by PDE calculations. That's that 4th column. PDE calculates capacities by square footage. So any space that could potentially be a classroom can be calculated, have students counted. That's why at the high school, you don't have this, it says 2,034 students, because that's how many square footage classrooms they have available if you wanted to max them out at 35. So that's where that comes from. And PDE does not take into consideration your special spaces for your special programs, for art, music, all that stuff. So I put that column in there because we have one red number over there in the demographic max projections, which exceeds the PDE calculation and CMSD, and that's North Strabane. And as soon as I read that demographic report, the intermediates were the first thing that gave me alarm. So if 541 ever becomes a reality, it will take some unconventional methods to cope with that burst. And it looks like in his projections that will be a pass-through. So it'll be a bubble group that are back-to-back, and they'll pass through there for 2 years. And that 2-year thing, we'll have to make decisions on what it looks like during those 2 years before we panic and think we need to go to another school or add-on. So that's something to just chew on and look at, and if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. But I think this is the start of what we need to start thinking about as we move towards a potential Wildville project. So with that said, the last thing on that chart was something I just put on there as a jumping off point. We've had some conversations that have led us to the recommendation it should potentially be the size of use. So I took that as the possibility, and I formulated it based on the projections of 2025 for Wildville and Borland Manor, and then I added in about 100 students that we could redistrict to give relief to some of those other schools that you see are red, which would allow full day K in all those buildings and balance us out a bit. across the district. So that's how I got 730. And then you look, you know, they'd be fine there for, the max capacity is 840, for any future growth. So that, again, just a jumping off point, and, so now we can take the demographic to what we look like right now and how we might wanna plan for the future. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yep.
So if we're, new Wylandville is only replacing old Wylandville, or we are also absorbing another elementary school or two in new Wylandville?
I took Borland Manor, so it would absorb Borland Manor, and I took about 100 students, just as a rough number, that we would take from some other place and put there. And just to give a visual, we built capacity on the Cecil side, and we have a portion of East End of Canonsburg, 9-8, that we could shift around, and then, it was 2004, we took all of Meadowbrook and what would be Meadow Lakes now, off of Wylandville and put them at South Central. So we'd probably shift back around, I mean, if I was making a decision, I'd do a recommendation, and move those to New Wylandville. So we'd be balancing all of our elementary schools out in that kind of a way.
So that's always been the plan, is to eliminate a building and merge, kinda like we did with the Muse, got rid of Cecil and brought them all in. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was
Consolidation.
ever the plan. I
Yeah,
didn't know
that's,
so.
if we stay on the path we've taken so far, that would be it. The consolidation definitely yields more resources in one spot, more cost effective, programmatic.
We've stayed on course with that plan, that conceptual, facilities plan since the spring of 2014. And, with a couple minor deviations or alterations, where we took, the middle school and high school and did a flip-flop there, because of demographics moving in at the secondary levels. That was a minor change, but redistricting was certainly part of that whole process. And, we've been very fortunate that we've been able to, maintain the vision, with that plan, since then. And, not only does it accommodate, for the growth in enrollment, but it updates our buildings to provide, for 21st century education and instruction. And we really set out to do all of this, to accommodate full-day kindergarten programming. So we're getting really close to that. And, yeah, I think we're all excited. So, come on, Lila.
So I wasn't on the board when we redistricted before. How was that received by the parents? Probably not well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, if your child was being moved, we've done it twice, I think.
Yeah, it's
we've-
not easy.
Yeah, it's very
You have to
difficult.
draw a line.
I lived in Cecil at the time, and we were just getting ready to move to where we live on O'Hare Road. And it literally, at one point, was like, okay, your side of the street in the
Oh,
floor
you were
plan
one of
went
them?
one way, and that side of the street went the other way, and I was at that meeting.
And truthfully, I think what made it more difficult is we hadn't had the kickoff of this vision, and it kind of was the precursor, and so it kind of felt, I'm sure, like it came out of nowhere, but it really was years of just building up.
Well, maybe even with this Wylandville plan, there should be a vision that's shared out with the communities, because I had no idea, I just assumed we were on this one-for-one building replacement process.
This redistricting would be more geographical and I think less questionable, if that makes sense. Last time, we had to be very deliberate. We took it down to, I need 5 second graders. And we looked at maps and found out what street had 5 second graders. And this was how desperate we were at a time before we could build Muse.
We didn't have any money.
We didn't have any room. I mean, when I saw the 325 for Wylandville, as the PDE capacity, Shannon would say, there's no way. I'd say, there is a way, because I had 325 there. I had to, because you absolutely use every space. First Street was teaching art in the gym. You know, and so it was a time when we were really up against the wall.
So we divided their library to have another.
Oh, yeah, we did. We cut every space up. It was, so, you know, to get us through that 2 years till Muse could be built, it was tough.
Well, this one might not be as bad because you're gonna move all the more, so you're not taking the kids away
Because
from
it
their
didn't make
friends and
sense.
things like that.
That's what he's trying to say, is it probably didn't make sense because you didn't know, and we had a goal in mind.
Any other questions for Scott? All right, Tim?
Just a few, just 2 short points, I'll be brief. Spring recruiting, Rachel and I, have the PERC virtual job fair coming up next Wednesday at Duquesne University. Scheduled to interview 57 candidates. So it filled up, our schedule's filled up nicely, and we're hoping that we can build up our sub pool, get a nice pool for building subs and long-term sub assignments. So we're looking forward to reporting back to you how that goes. The only other thing that I wanted to report to you is we're coming into our open enrollment season for benefits. We're actually kicking that off the last week of March, starting here in central office and I believe at the high school. And that'll carry us all the way through the month of April. That's a busy time for us because our enrollment vendor actually goes out and visits all of the 9 buildings and sits with the employees to do their open enrollment. That can be a challenge, just getting everybody to schedule and making sure that we've captured everybody. But we did it last year, we'll do it this year. It's busy, but you know, hopefully we'll be able to have everything wrapped up sometime in May and have all of our enrollments over to Highmark and have that wrapped up. So just wanted to let you know that that's happening.
Questions for Tim? All right, Jordan?
I'll talk loud so we can hear over the air conditioning here.
Give it a minute, it's just once it gets revved up, it's.
I'll say, just takes a minute to get rolling there. But it'd be nice to be in a nice new central office here soon, right? I'll start off with our transportation update. We did receive 3 of our 4 new buses last week on Thursday. Today was actually the first day they were on the road. We had we installed the radios and the GPS tracking device and get the stickers on to make them CanadaMac official. So today was their first day on the route. They worked, they made it through. I did say 3 of the 4 came in. The 4th did break down on the way up here. A plastic reservoir broke and the antifreeze leaked out, so it overheated. So it's just a matter of replacing a plastic component. So nothing major. Hopefully we have that here in the next couple of days. With that being said, spring sports have started, and to this point, we've accommodated every request. Varsity practices, JV baseball is using vans, so whatever it's taking right now, we're getting everybody covered, we're getting everybody to their games, to their practices, so it's been working out pretty well. We had our first session of our new CDO class. We ended up canceling session number 2 because of the weather last Saturday, but we're gonna make that up this Saturday. We had 11 candidates show up. We tend to have a few not come to day 2, so we'll see how well we do on the second day and how many we can get through class.
How long does that program, like how long does it take to get someone through?
So it takes, you have to have 16 hours of class time, so we use 2 Saturdays to get them to their class time. After their class portion, they can go and get their permit. Once they're permitted, we bring them back, and as many hours as it takes to learn your pre-trip, get some behind the wheel time. We can get someone from class to licensed in about 5 weeks. And then, of course, we like to spend some more time with a behind the wheel trainer. You know, it's not just 5 weeks, here's 72 students, and, you know, have fun. So our goal with this group would be have them kind of ready by the end of the year, and every year we have retirements, so we have positions to fill, and this would be a good pool to just kind of step into those spots. 2 of which are van drivers. Those are our high success rates. Every van driver that stepped into our class is now on a bus. So hopefully that stays true, and that's 2 bodies that will immediately move up and kind of into a route for next year, beginning of the school year.
Out of all the 11 that you said took the class, and you say you're gonna lose a couple for the next class, so say you had double, how many actually, out of 11, how many can we look, 2, 3, 5?
4 or 5 would be great. Like I
But-
said, the 2 van drivers, kind of that's been 100% success rate. So I'm counting on those 2 for sure. And then we usually land 2 or 3 of the others that come through. Some of them come in and it's just not for them, or something they were trying. We've never had anyone get licensed and leave us for another school, which could be a possibility. But generally, they come in, they get on the bus. Hey, this bus is bigger than I thought. You know, it's not for me. I don't like kids. Whatever it is, they end up not sticking around. So yeah, get them some chill buses, and maybe we'll have a little bit more success. So I hope to pull 4 or 5 from each class we've had, and that's been about our average.
Okay, that's good, that's a good average.
Yeah, it's been a good program for us, and you know, as the van drivers move into the bus, we get new van drivers, and then kind of put them in the class, and it's been a good cycle. Good. So transportation, things are, you know, definitely on the upswing, and we hope to continue that trend. Middle school update. Things are still going well. We're still on our projected date. We're still looking at October. Just the general contractors, we'll kind of give you a quick run through what we're working on. Mealy is our site contractor. They're spending most of their time getting the play field ready. We're going to use that as a laydown area and start getting the field ready up there. They're also moving all the excess soil onto the neighbor's property, which was an agreement we had to remove that soil from our property. Mucci, our general contractor, they completed the locker room block walls. They continue to work on the roof. Again, there's just that one last section to tie in, so that's 99% complete. The metal stud framing and drywall in the classroom areas is a major process right now, and we saw it last time. It was pretty much just metal framing, a lot of drywall is going up, and we actually just started to put some paint up too. So we're definitely a lot of progress, and as we get to our next visit, you'll see a lot of change just in that quick time frame. Started on continued on lightning protection and the window installation in the storefront and the cafeteria, the large windows on the side. Working on getting that complete now. A1, our electrical contractor, continued the rough-ins and panels throughout the building. And they started the lighting controls and fire protection system. So again, it's another big step to, you know, near our completion here, that we're getting into the final steps, final phases. Our plumbing contractor started to work on the rough-ins on the 3rd floor. 1st and 2nd are complete. And Legalia, our HVAC, completed the chiller installation, and they're working on all the rooftops, and they continue to work on all the plumbing and ductwork throughout the building. So the building's making a lot of progress. Obviously, the interior is the focus at this point. The only exterior work is the brick walls. So we'll get another meeting set, or another tour set, and go out and definitely enjoy looking at the progress, and hopefully we get our mark.
We look at like toward the end of April, maybe?
Yeah, you know, before next board meeting should be a good time.
Any questions for John? Thank you. Johnny?
So I'll start with an audit update. Typically this time of year, I'm not working on an audit with Diane. It's a non-traditional year, but we're plugging through them. So the first was the cafeteria audit, that we had some on-site corrective actions that I had to submit, and I did those in a timely manner, and was advised I pushed back and said that's quite voluminous, cause I've had budget meetings every month, all of those years, and they wanted every handout, so they, reduced it to, for all of us, to the final May, June of every year, which is still a lot of paperwork, that was just one of the 14 items. So everything has been, I had to ask for an extension on one item because we needed further clarification, because they wanted all legal matters for that same time duration. And so I actually had to engage a builder to see what I could put together, and we got a smaller scope, none, and was able to, submit everything, so I haven't heard anything back from them. One of the questions on the list of 14 is a lot, about forecasting and budget presentations, and ironically, I serve as a statewide mentor for business managers, sort of volunteer-wise, but I'm looking at more official capacity, and one of the things I do in that capacity is share budget presentations and business manager checklists, because we have such strict time deadlines for certain things. And I shared with Mike before I went to PASMO, but again today, as national conference members come to our statewide conference, and they have seen some of those presentations, and they've asked me to present at the national conference this year. They picked the title, not me, but it will actually help me, because this is one of the auditor general questions, is it's time to refresh your budget presentation of winning an honor for presenting your budget. And they asked me to share some of the techniques I've shared in some of the workshops with the new business managers. So hopefully that helps, because they wanted that type of information, believe it or not, in one of their inquiries on that 14 list. So you'll get to see my budget presentation on April 5th. I'll be presenting the proposed final budget to the Budget and Finance Committee and then to all of you on April 20th for approval. So those are the budget plans, and I'm also working for the month of April to do a food service renewal. Because we outsource, every so many years we have to go out to bid, we're in a non-bid year. In a non-bid year, you're allowed to do a 1-year renewal, some costs have to be held constant. So I'll be preparing that renewal. The school board needs to approve the renewal, so this committee will make the pre-approval, of that renewal process. So those are the things I'm working on now through the month of April. That's it.
Joan, is there any changes in the state funding?
There's lots of stuff going on. We don't have a final budget yet. I do anticipate this year we will have one by mid-June. The budget that I present in April won't have the new numbers, because they haven't really, there's still budget hearings being conducted even this week. So I'm not sure what our final number will be, and I'd rather not put in a number than, I'd rather have more money than less money. So I'm gonna just hold our numbers constant, but there is definitely movement. We're hearing that there will be, if it passes, maybe an epic, state budget increase. There's concerns about that, obviously, because it's sustainable. Because once we spend it, if we spend it on reoccurring things and they don't sustain it, that's a big concern. But we're hearing that it could be significant. They're also planning how they're gonna get the money to do that is to take and make a standard charter. And his Governor Wolf's proposal has, doing a charter school flat rate that they charge across the state, and the revenues that they would receive would be how they would do that. But, I think we just need to wait to see how the budget hearings end up. I know that Michael's organization, testified this week on about charter school and, different items that could affect that. So I read something today about that. So I think this year will be a non-eventful budget year. For those of you that haven't been here in other years, there's been times we've been up to the last minute not knowing what we're gonna get. Ken McMillan's in a unique situation in that we get roughly 25%, 24%, 20-some% is our state piece of the pie of our revenues. The majority of our revenues come from local revenues, and that for us has been a stable revenue stream. Even when COVID and the economies turned at different times, ours is stable here. And that helped the budget a little bit this year too, because I went with some of the statewide forecasts that were out there in terms of earned income revenue. I'm trying not to use the acronyms, earned income, and different, they were expecting it to be a lot lower, and ours was not. So that helped our budget when I did the preliminary budget a whole lot. But more to come. I'll keep reporting on where we're at, but right now I think
organization that I'm associated with, Pennsylvania Association for School Administrators. And, yeah, they have a lobbying group as well, and they pay attention. They're in, Capitol Hall. Just a couple days ago, the governor had an idea for equitable funding with charter schools and greater accountability standards. And it kind of got booted out. So he's looking forward at this point to attaching it to some portion of the budget. So, yeah, like you said, it's unstable. We'll see how it kind of pans out over the course of the next month or so. One of those things for accountability, I was surprised by, I hadn't heard it before, is, like you board members and all of us actually have to fill out the financial interest forms, the statements every year that Brenda submitted to us just recently, and they're due every May, I guess it is, right? Well, charter school employees had never had to do those forms, and that was one of the proposals for the accountability standards, to include that in making them fill out those financial statement forms. So stay tuned, we'll see where it goes.
What's the timeline or next steps on the audit?
I believe from our entrance audit that the next steps will be that they will reach out to individuals to do interviews. Probably best definitely mention now we interviewed, but we had to, one of the 14 questions was I had to provide the board members. And what I had done in preparing is I put the terms, they were getting new, and they wasn't here in 17 or 21. Something I may not have shared at the last meeting, because it all blurs to me, it feels like it's all happening like this very second, is we were able to find out, how was it selected? That was one of the questions we asked at the entrance audit. There was and she actually sent this to my class, I messed it up. The first one, I'm gonna paraphrase because we didn't fall into it. The first category was you had to have so much fund balance in all of your funds, and it was a higher dollar amount, we didn't meet that threshold. The second one was you had to have 60 million, and you had to have applied for exceptions one time. And we did have 60 million when we had both projects brand new, because when they say funds, there's the general fund, the capital projects fund, the wellness fund, all these things I had you write down. And so at one moment in time, we had a lot of money sitting, but it was assigned for a project that, had well, plan upon PE reports saying we're gonna spend this money on X. We have reportings we do to the DCED, which is the tax bureau, to say this is what we're spending on. But because we've had at one point in time 60 million, and I don't know what the first category was on, and we filed for exception one time. The one time that we filed for exception, we didn't use the exception. In fact, we came in under the index that year, but it was a teacher contract negotiation year, and we hadn't even exchanged proposals at that time. So I mean, at that point in time, like, it was, that's what you do, you just don't know what you really know what your numbers are gonna look like at that stage. The other category I just recalled was you had to have so many expenditures over a certain dollar amount in a time period, and I think it was 100 million in expenditures, and we had 850, and the max that we had in this time frame was in the 80s, so that's how we got eliminated in category one.
With those exceptions, although we applied for it,
Just one.
we ended up not using it, so.
And the final caveat that she told us is, if you hadn't had an auditor general audit in 5 years, then, so they took everyone who hadn't had an auditor general audit and they applied to Comcast to it. So we had, and I was expecting it, that our regular audit, the question I didn't ask, is will we still have our regular auditor general audit, but I didn't want to ask. I figured I'll just wait, maybe a couple.
Any other questions from Jones? All right, Becky?
I'd let him use my time, but if I could just say thank you to, Mr. Pencrowley and Kelsey Oberly for, being here tonight too, because they were in support of it, and, also, Jordan is doing a lot to, help with things as well, so.
Thank you. By making the space great.
Yes, exactly.
Are we anticipating that the children is up and running for next school year?
It would be for next school year.
Yeah, we'll read for the record, I think it's